the top federal prosecutor in D.C. President Trump has encouraged Congress to keep up with the pace he established since taking office in January. Bernie Bennett, Washington.
Texas Republicans are preparing to redraw the state's congressional districts ahead of the 2026 House elections. Correspondent Jennifer King reports.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has called a special session starting today to address Hill Country flooding and redraw the state's congressional map in a move encouraged by President Trump. The idea is to help the GOP retain control of the U.S. House during next year's midterm elections. Adam Kincaid, the executive director of the National Republican Redistricting Trust, says smart map drawing can yield pickup opportunities while not putting our incumbents in jeopardy. I'm Jennifer King.
President Trump is threatening to hold up a stadium deal for Washington's football team if it doesn't restore its old name. Trump said Sunday on his social media site that the Washington Commanders should revert to the Redskins and the Cleveland Guardians should return to the Indians. On Wall Street, the Dow down by 19 points, the Nasdaq rose 78, with the S&P 500 up by 8 points. Oil dropped 34 cents to $67 a barrel. More at townhall.com.
They say timing is everything in the gold and silver markets, and it's true. Dennis Prager here for AmFed Coin and Bullion. Although you can buy at the right time, if you buy the wrong coins, you may not make a profit. When gold was $400 an ounce, many people were talked into buying high-grade old gold and silver collector's coins. Unfortunately, most of the people who bought these so-called semi-numismatic coins, like the $20 St. Gordon's and Liberty Head gold coins, have not broken even on their investment. Incredible, given that gold has risen approximately 525% since then. So while timing is everything, if you buy the wrong coins, the timing simply doesn't matter. Having a dealer who cares about positioning you in the right types of coins or bullion will mean more to your portfolio than anything else. That's why I deal with Nick Rovich and AmFed Coin and Bullion. Whether you're buying or selling, call 800-221-7694. That's 800-221-7694. Or go to AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com.
From the KERN Newsroom, your live and local news update on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
I'm Bill Robbins. Bakersfield Councilmember Andre Gonzalez will be running for State Assembly in District 35. He made the announcement a day after the announcement from Assemblywoman Dr. Jasmeet Bain that she's going to be running for Congress in District 22. District 35 includes Bakersfield, Delano, Shafter, Wasco, Arvin, McFarland, as well as parts of unincorporated Kern County. Governor Gavin Newsom has reversed a decision by the California Parole Board to release one of the people convicted in the killing of 17-year-old Amanda Zubia. Earlier, the parole board initially granted parole to Mary Cruz Galaviz, who was serving 20 years for murder. Newsom said that he reviewed evidence in the case and came to the conclusion that she poses an unreasonable danger to society if she is released. A police chase after a reportedly stolen vehicle leads to the arrest of a 21-year-old woman. She was pursued by CHP and Kern County Sheriff's deputies and crashed the vehicle Thursday night in southwest Bakersfield. It was first reported a little before 9:30 p.m. in the area of North Chester and Beardsley Avenues. The sheriff's deputy did a traffic stop. The vehicle did pull over, but then took off and led deputies on a chase. Air One provided assistance. CHP took over. After the vehicle was disabled, she refused commands, but was taken in
just
with
occurred to me. I
a
was like,
police canine.
something feels like it's
A man owes
missing.
his life to a good Samaritan and a Bakersfield canine after falling into a canal and fighting for his life against the current. The man who arrived said he heard someone yelling help. He turned and saw the man in the water. It happened near Oak and 24th Street early Thursday morning. A BPD officer threw his dog's leash down so the man would have something to hold on to until firefighters arrived. I'm Bill Robbins in the KERN Newsroom with news every half hour or when it breaks on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
Please. Flores, time this up. Thank you very much.
I had 3 more seconds and I had the whole thing.
I
was supposed to have 3 minutes.
Sir, thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
It's the JR Show from Studio 99 at the American General Media Complex. On air at News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN. Online at kernradio.com. Now, here is your host, JR.
Greetings, radio friends. You may be able to tell by my voice that I am not JR. I'm, I guess, the next best thing. My name is Clayton Campbell. I'm pinch hitting for JR today. He's on vacation. We've got a lot to discuss today, so I'll get right to it. This is a very quick hour. Last week, I covered the show on Friday, and it went by so fast. I think I told everyone that if you ever need an hour to go by quickly, try hosting a radio show that has 3 or 4 breaks in it when you have a lot to say. I want to start by picking up where I left off on Friday. I think I told everybody that I had assembled this team. I assembled the Avengers to play in a law enforcement softball tournament. Now, I'm not law enforcement. I'm a criminal defense attorney. So I guess you could say I'm adjacent because I'm part of the criminal justice system. I was told about this tournament by a probation officer who's a very good softball player, by the way. His name is Nick Cepeda. Excellent probation officer as well. He told me, hey, you should try to get into this tournament and play with a bunch of cops. So I called the Sheriff's Activity League representative who was organizing the tournament. And I asked her, hey, what's the criteria for this tournament? Do I need to have police officers on my team? Because the tournament was called the Battle of the Badges. Battle of the Badges. So, and she told us basically we don't need no stinking badges. Just bring anybody you want. Bring whoever. I said, does it have to be co-ed? Do I have to have at least one officer? Nope, just bring whoever you want, she said. So I took her at her representation, and I went out and I recruited the sweatiest, toughest ringers that I know. And I know some really good softball players. And so we stacked this team with these guys, and it was we did very well. We won the tournament. We took home the trophy. And, you know, all of these officers that were out there were very gracious about it. You know, they wanted to beat us too because we're representing the criminal defense side of things. I did have 2 attorneys on the team, so it wasn't all a bunch of sweaty ringers. Although the other attorney, Jeff Warren, who's a partner over at Klein Natale, he's a very good softball player as well. But the 2 of us, with all these other guys, we put on a show. So anyway, we won the whole thing. We have this now. I have a trophy in my office that says 3rd annual Battle of the Badges, and we don't have any badges on the team. And there was really only one team that was a little sore about it, and that was the North Kern State Prison. The prison guards there, they didn't like it, and they were a little upset. But the highway patrolmen, professionals, those guys are athletes. I'll tell you what, I looked at that team, and there was maybe one guy who was out of shape on the whole team, and he probably wasn't even a highway patrolman. I mean, the rest of these guys were just, they looked like they were the guy on the recruiting poster. Join the highway patrol and you can be a physical specimen as well. But those guys were tremendous athletes. The Bakersfield Police Department had some great players on that team, and they played really well. I've got a lot of friends on that team. They were all really cool. The Metro Court deputies, those are the guys I see all the time. Every day I go to court, I see them. And I wish I could remember which one of them it was, but one of those guys made one of the most amazing catches in the outfield. It was pretty awesome. So anyway, we had a great time. We cooked out in the 100-degree heat, but it was worth it when we took home that trophy. So the question remains: will the Sheriff's Activity League allow me next year to assemble the Avengers and defend our title? We shall see. I'll keep you posted on that. So today, what else are we going to talk about? I'll tell you what, this time goes by so fast. I'm looking at this clock, it's ticking down. I feel like I'm on death row waiting for the needle. But it's I want to cover a few things today. I told you last week I was going to explain to you why the Superman film is not woke. So I gave you a warning because this will have some spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't like hearing spoilers, you should probably listen to something else. I would recommend you get like a podcast, some kind of a conservative intellectual podcast, so you can have something of a similar caliber to what you get on this radio show. But if you've already seen the movie, or you don't really care about the spoilers and you want to know why is it that some people on the political right are complaining that this movie is woke, you want to hear this. So we're gonna cover Superman. So before we do that, I want to lay a little bit of groundwork. So I'll do that until this first break that's coming up. I want to explain a constitutional concept. So I've been on the Ralph Bailey Show a few times, and we've discussed various legal topics, one of which was the birthright citizenship topic that came up. It's still an ongoing question in the courts. And that centered on a discussion of the 14th Amendment. Now, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution is one of the post-Civil War amendments. So we have the War of Southern Rebellion, as I would call it, where the slaveholder states didn't think that they had to submit to the authority of the national government. And they claimed to secede. And so the legal question of whether a state could secede was ultimately settled on the battlefield. And in the wake of that war, toward the end of the war, the 13th Amendment was passed. The 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. It abolishes involuntary servitude, except for prison inmates. So the state can force prison inmates to perform labor, but nobody else can be subjected to involuntary servitude. So slavery is outlawed forever. So then the 14th Amendment guaranteed the equal protection of the laws, because the powers that were, Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans in Congress at the time were concerned that there would be a disparate treatment of people who were formerly slaves, or just racial discrimination in general, even if people, Black people specifically in this country who were not slaves, would be treated differently in the post-war era. And they wanted to protect the people, everyone in the country. And so the 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection under the law. Now, that term has been interpreted, and the interpretation has grown very, very complicated. It was one of the topics in law school when we discussed equal protection. And it's a very complicated concept, so I'll try to break it down a little bit. The other post-Civil War amendment was the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed the right to vote to everyone, including the formerly enslaved. So let's talk about the 14th Amendment. What does it mean, equal protection of the law? So we look around at the law and we see there are some laws that treat people, certain groups of people, differently than other people. And so when I describe it that way, that sounds wrong. But let's say our 10-year-olds treated the same way as 16-year-olds when it comes to getting a driver's license. Well, obviously not. We're treating one class of people, that's everyone who's under 16. We're treating them in one way, and then anyone who's 16 and over is treated a different way. So that is what we call discrimination, where you treat one group of people differently than the way you treat another group of people. So not all discrimination in the law is illegal under the 14th Amendment. Now that sounds crazy, because when we think of discrimination, we're thinking of discrimination on the basis of race or religion or national origin or gender or something like that. Those are the kinds of discrimination that always get your attention, because those are the kinds of discrimination that society recognizes as wrong. So we have different degrees of scrutiny that are applied to different types of discrimination. So what do I mean by scrutiny? When the courts are reviewing an action taken by the government that treats one group of people in a different way than the government treats another group of people, the court looks at the classification of people to determine whether that classification is protected by the 14th Amendment. So, for example, being 10 years old or being under 16, for example, is not protected in the same way that, say, being born of a particular race or gender. That's a different type of discrimination. So we have certain classes that are considered protected classes, and so if there's a classification, not classes, a classification. So we got to be careful not to say that a class is suspect, because there's nothing suspicious about a class of people. What's suspicious is the classification. So if the government says we have a law that says if you're Black, you can't ride the public transportation bus, but if you're white, you can. Well, that is a suspect classification, because we're looking at where it's like, well, what? That's weird. Why would you? What's the reason for that discrimination, for that discriminatory policy? And of course, in the South after the Civil War, we had all those Jim Crow laws, and those specifically did those things where they, based on race, discriminated in the law against people. And the Supreme Court said, well, when we're looking at a classification based on race, that is what we call a suspect classification. And so in order for that government action to be constitutional under the 14th Amendment, there has to be a compelling government interest, and the measure has to be narrowly tailored to accomplish that compelling government interest. And let me just tell you this: if the classification is suspect, requiring strict scrutiny by the Supreme Court, it is almost never a constitutional action. Then we have discrimination, say, on the basis of gender, which we call that a quasi-suspect classification. So you can't, for example, Navy SEALs have to be men. Is that unconstitutional? Well, if we have the strict scrutiny test, probably. But because it's intermediate scrutiny, we have an important government interest, and it doesn't have to be as narrowly tailored. So the court will allow something like that. Everything else, every other kind of classification that's not suspect or quasi-suspect classification gets the rational basis test. So that means if there's a rational reason for the law, and it's rational to say that you have to have a certain age of maturity before we trust you to drive a car, then that's rational. And so that discrimination would not be illegal under the 14th Amendment. All right, so here we are. I know I just gave you a quick constitutional law lesson on equal protection. We'll come back to that after the break, and we'll talk about Superman, and I'll tell you why it's not woke, and you'll see why this is relevant.
News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
King Door Company continues to set the standard in the garage door industry, and I'm here to tell you a few of the reasons why. First off, King Door carries Clopay garage panels and LiftMaster openers, so you're guaranteed quality and reliability well beyond the reach of most garage door companies, and it just gets better from there. King Door has a fleet of fully stocked service trucks with all the parts and tools to handle any job quickly and efficiently, and those trucks are manned by the most knowledgeable technicians anywhere. They have all the technical expertise imaginable and the most up-to-the-minute training available. In fact, King Door is so committed to training that they have the King Door Academy, a full-size, state-of-the-art classroom right on the premises with all the latest teaching aids, including working garage doors to simulate any installation, repair, or technique. Your garage door is a very important part of the safety, security, and look of your home, so don't trust it to anyone but King Door Company. Call them today at 397-2744, stop by the showroom at 7450 District Boulevard, or check them out online at kingdoor.com. King Door Company, your company with the pride of a lion.
The impact of a meal goes well beyond feeding our bodies, because when people don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from, they can truly thrive, like Marta.
And now we'll hear from our class valedictorian, who with our hard work never ceases to amaze us. Please welcome Marta Moreno.
And Alex.
Hey, Alex, how did the interview go?
I did it. I got the job. I can't believe it.
I knew it. Let's meet up later to celebrate.
And Diego.
Mom, I got first place at the science fair with my volcano project.
That's amazing, sweetie. Congratulations.
Because when people are fed, futures are nourished, and everyone deserves to live a full life. Join the movement to end hunger at feedingamerica.org/actnow. feedingamerica.org/actnow. A public service announcement brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is an important notice to all U.S. taxpayers. The IRS is giving away billions of dollars in tax savings through a federal program called the Fresh Start Initiative to aid delinquent taxpayers. This initiative was established for anyone facing financial hardship and unable to pay their back taxes. Qualifying and enrolling in this program will stop all collections, settle your delinquent tax problem, and even reduce what you owe by thousands of dollars. Call the hotline at People's Tax Relief to see if you qualify and get this free information by dialing 800-285-2521. If you have unfiled tax returns or cannot afford to pay your personal or business back taxes, you can now get the help you need. One simple phone call can resolve your tax problem and save you thousands of dollars. To see if you qualify and to get this important free information, call 800-285-2521. 800-285-2521. 800-285-2521.
Must qualify for enrollment. Results vary. Consult with your tax professional prior to enrollment.
Start your day right. First Look with Scott Cox, 6 to 9 a.m.
Scott Cox here from the First Look program. I'm taking a couple of days off. Not really a vacation, not really going anywhere, just kind of a short, sweaty staycation, I suppose. But we'll be back Wednesday morning, bright and early, with brand new programming for you. You don't want to miss that. 6 to 9 a.m. right here at News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
First Look with Scott Cox, 6 to 9 a.m. News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN. The Charlie Kirk Show, weekdays at 6 p.m. on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN. Now, back to the JR Show.
Welcome back, radio friends. This is Clayton Campbell filling in for JR Flores. We've got this great John Williams music here, the Superman theme song, so I can explain to you why Superman is not woke. Let me first talk about why people are saying the Superman film is woke. All right, there was an interview with, I think his name is James Gunn, right? The director, the guy that he
Yes.
directed Guardians of the Galaxy, and they recruited him to direct the Superman film. And as you may know, if you're a comic book nerd like me, there are two different worlds of superheroes, or I guess bodies of work. You have the DC comics and you have the Marvel comics. So if you like the Avengers, Captain America, Spider-Man, that's the Marvel comic universe. Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, that's the DC universe. Now, the DC films, I've always been interested in them, but they've never done as well as the Marvel films. And I don't know why that is, but they never seem to do as they never seem to do as well, and they haven't been that good. But they're a little darker. I don't know if you would agree. They're just kind of dark and serious. They're trying to take a superhero movie and make it really serious. If you've seen the documentary about Christopher Reeve, it's really moving, by the way. But it's interesting because I hadn't thought about that. I saw the Superman films as a child, the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and it didn't occur to me then that the studio and Christopher Reeve himself as an actor took a huge risk making that film, because before that movie, there never had been a serious superhero movie. You go back to the 60s, remember the absurd Batman and Robin TV show where they would have the animation that would say pow or bam every time they punch somebody, and the ridiculous colorful costumes. And then you have Batman himself, who looks like he's never set foot in a gym, but he's wearing this like skin tight costume with this silk bat, thing on his head. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But it was meant to be a funny show for kids. And the old Batman movie, the thing that's hilarious about that movie, I don't know if you've seen the Batman movie from the 60s. It was with Adam West.
A long time ago, but yeah.
There were some hilarious and serious lines in that movie that are so quotable. I just wish it were a more mainstream film so you could use the quotes, I should say. Like, for example, there was a moment where Bruce Wayne is being wooed by the woman that's actually Catwoman. She's a Russian or newspaper reporter or whatever, and he says to her in such an earnest voice, he says, "Of what use is a dream if not a blueprint for courageous action?" And it doesn't sound like a line that would come out of a ridiculous movie like that. And the whole movie is full of those hilarious lines. But what I'm getting at is all these ridiculous movies. I don't know if you've seen the movie Condor Man, which was a Disney film made in the early 80s, maybe the late 70s. Also a ridiculous movie, but hilarious. And then Superman comes out in 1978, and they took a huge risk trying to make a serious drama out of a comic book character who's really dressed like a clown. If you saw somebody dressed like that and they weren't like a superhero cosplayer or something, you'd think, well, why are you wearing that? So at any rate, that was a big risk. And so after the Superman movies were successful, at least the first two were good, and then the last two that Christopher Reeve were in, they were regrettable. But other studios realized we can make superhero movies. So then you fast forward to 1989, and you have the Batman film with Michael Keaton, which was actually pretty good. And then they had a few more of those. And then the Marvel universe took off. About 20 years ago, they started making these Marvel movies, and they've made so many of them, I've lost track. I don't even know what's going on. I can't claim to keep up. So DC has tried to do the same thing Marvel's done, and they keep making these movies. And they finally got a good director, and he made what I believe is an excellent Superman film. And people asked him about it. They said, well, is this supposed to make a political message? Is it supposed to make a statement? And he said, well, it's about an immigrant who comes to America, and he's a good person, essentially. And people started going, I hate to use this term about people on my own side, but conservatives sometimes, I think, are mining for an offense, right? They're looking to be offended, just like the woke left is always looking for a reason to find something to be objectionable. People are looking to Hollywood, and everything, you have to find the wokeness in it. Now, I feel like I have a pretty well-tuned wokeness radar. So when I'm watching a film and I'm picking up on a woke message, it's very off-putting to me. And I went into this one expecting that, and it was exactly the opposite. And the number one line in the entire film that illustrates for you why Superman was not a woke message, that is the villain, Lex Luthor, admits about 3/4 of the way through the film, he admits that his motive is envy. And envy is the motive of Marxists. Marxism is nothing but a political philosophy built on envy, taking from other people who have something, people whom you resent for having something, for achieving something, and taking it from them by force because of envy. Envy and social justice, the way we use that term in the modern political world, are the same thing. And Lex Luthor, the villain, trying to kill Superman, he confesses that his entire motive is envy. So that boils it, that sums it up right there. Now, what did James Gunn say? He was talking about immigration. And right now there's a raging immigration debate about Donald Trump actually enforcing the law. So we have all these laws on the books that were passed by Congress, that were in the method prescribed by the Constitution. So you have all these congressmen and senators elected by the people of this country who passed laws. The laws were signed by the president. They have not been repealed, and they've been in effect for decades. And over the last several administrations, we've had a series of presidents who, for political reasons, because they don't like the law, have chosen to violate their oath of office. The oath of office says the president swears an oath to defend and protect the Constitution, but to faithfully execute the laws. That is his job, is to faithfully execute the law of the land. And when you're Barack Obama and you decide, I'm not going to faithfully execute the law, I'm going to make it up as I go along. Or if you're Joe Biden and you just simply encourage millions of people to illegally come to the United States, there's going to be a backlash. And that's why Donald Trump got elected to a second term and won the national popular vote, because people were fed up with the lawlessness. These laws, if they need to be changed, if there's a good reason to change them the way they're supposed to be changed. We have a constitutional process for changing the law, but evidently there's not a will for it unless there's a Democrat acting like a dictator and deciding when and where he's going to enforce the law. So we have this raging debate about immigration. And of course, people on the left, they like to make everything into some kind of a racist motive, right? That everything has to do with race, because they recognize that the people of this country have a conscience about racism. Now, look at our history, you'll see racism. You see, there was a reason we had to have the civil rights movement. There was a reason we had to have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. There was a reason we had to have a civil war. All of these were the result of racism. And now some people would say, well, because we have racism in our history, that means that we're founded on racism and it's just essential to our entire system. So we need to burn the Constitution and replace it with something different. I look at it and I see the exact opposite. At the time that Thomas Jefferson penned the words, all men are created equal and are endowed by their creator with inalienable rights, including the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are instituted among men to secure these rights. When he drafted the Declaration of Independence, those were crazy ideas. And they still are in some parts of the world. There's still slavery in parts of the world where less enlightened people have their way. So without Thomas Jefferson writing those words and creating the founding ideas, Thomas Jefferson and the other founders who understood the idea of equality, everyone is created equal, we would never get the 13th Amendment. We would never get the civil rights movement. So we've made so much progress. I'm proud of America for that progress. More on this when we come back. I'm Clayton Campbell, pinch hitting for J.R. Flores on the J.R. Flores Show at Current Radio.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The Trump administration has released records of the FBI surveillance of Martin Luther.
Honestly, it's not that big of a deal. Shows let music play all the time, so it really doesn't hurt.
I got so much to say, I'm trying to cram it all in.
No, you're fine. You're doing a great job.
Assassination. The release involves an estimated 200,000 pages of records that have been under a court-imposed seal since 1977. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says President Trump is serious about wanting the NFL's Washington Commanders to go back to the name Redskins. Leavitt said Monday that Trump's threats to hold up a stadium deal for the team were not a joke. On Wall Street, the Dow down by 19 points, the Nasdaq rose 78, the S&P advanced 8. More details at srnnews.com.
From the KERN Newsroom, your live and local news update on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
I'm Bill Robbins. The California Supreme Court has announced that it will review the Kern River water diversions case. The state's highest court will review the decision from the 5th District Court of Appeals that overturned a previous ruling that they need to keep water in the Kern River at fish-friendly levels. The nearly 3-year-long case has bounced back and forth from the trial court to the appellate court. A spokesperson for Bring Back the Kern says that the river is not meant to be a dry desert space with nothing. A crash between a box truck and a semi caused all northbound lanes of I-5 to be temporarily closed over the weekend. The crash was reported a little before 4:30 Saturday afternoon, just south of the Interstate 5 escape ramp. One person was seriously hurt. I'm Bill Robbins in the KERN Newsroom with news every half hour or when it breaks on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
Hey, this is JR for Bakersfield Weight Loss. Let's talk about GLP-1s like semaglutides, those weight loss injections that seem to be all the rage these days. If you're currently using semaglutides injections but aren't seeing the results you want or you've hit a plateau, don't worry. The team at Bakersfield Weight Loss is ready to help you speed up your results safely and effectively. Maybe you had to stop taking the injections due to side effects or because your insurance no longer covered your treatment, or even worse, you gained the weight back. Don't give up. Go to BakersfieldWeightLoss.com. What you don't hear about these injections? Many people are facing failed results, bad side effects, rising costs, or simply want to get off the injections. At Bakersfield Weight Loss, they offer a breakthrough natural approach to help reset your metabolism to get the weight off fast and easy and keep it off without exercising, prepackaged foods, or counting calories. They help me do it. I lost 25 pounds and have kept...
Can you use the track Invincible by the band OK Go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And 11:50. Results may vary.
The Ralph Bailey Show, weekdays from 3 till 6 p.m.
I think the reason they upgraded Maya Hernandez's situation from involuntary manslaughter to murder was the fact that she made a decision. The folks in the spa told her she could bring the kids in, and she didn't even go check on them, let alone bring them in. I think murder charges might be appropriate.
On News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN. The Armstrong and Getty Show, weekdays noon to 2 on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN. Now, back to the JR Show.
Welcome back, radio friends. This is Clayton Campbell filling in for JR Flores. Right before the break, I was explaining how Americans have a conscience for racism that you don't see in every part of the world. You go, for example, just go to Europe, go to Mexico. You'll see on the television there's kind of a casual racism. I talked to a guy recently who's from Bulgaria, and he said that you get to Bulgaria, he didn't understand why everybody here was so sensitive about it. Over there, they tell racist jokes all the time, and I'm not saying that to say that it's okay. Obviously, racism is wrong, but Americans have a particular conscience for it that we don't get credit for. Instead, it gets exploited by people because they know if they push the right buttons, they can make you feel bad. And they can manipulate you into giving them what they want, voting for their policies. And so then you end up with people that are, and I'm talking about cynics in politics. I'm not talking about the general population. Most people are cool. Most people get along with one another. But there are people that will try to exploit your conscience on the issue of race in order to gain a political advantage. And that is disgusting to me. And so we see things like these theories that come out. And I'm going to tie this back into Superman, the film, and into the discussion of the 14th Amendment in a moment, if I can squeeze it all in the amount of time that I have. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm trying to cram a kind of a big idea into a small segment. There are people out there, I'm sure you've heard the term critical race theory, and it's a kind of a pseudoscience where people are trying to see racism everywhere, and they're trying to see it built into structures. So let's go back to the discussion of the 14th Amendment. When we talk about a discriminatory policy, what do we mean by a discriminatory policy? Because there have been some people who have created discriminatory policies that are cleverly disguised as non-discriminatory. And one of those examples would be in the South, they used to have a poll tax. So when you would go to vote, you had to pay a tax in order to cast your vote. And that was designed to keep poor people, and in those jurisdictions, the poor people tended to be Black people. And they were trying to keep them from the polls so they wouldn't be able to vote. So that was a policy that on its face looked neutral. It didn't say Black people weren't allowed to vote. It said you have to pay the tax in order to vote. So the Supreme Court rightly shot that down. They said, no, you can't do that. That's a discriminatory policy. So we have this distinction in the law between what we call de facto discrimination and de jure discrimination. So de jure discrimination is where the discrimination is spelled out in the law. Like the law back in the 1890s, there was the infamous Supreme Court case that upheld a separate but equal standard when it came to public access. That was the Plessy versus Ferguson case. That's one of the most notorious miscarriages of justice in American history. Ranks right up there with Roe versus Wade as one of the most outrageous miscarriages of justice. And so, but the Plessy versus Ferguson case was later overturned by Brown versus Board of Education and other cases. And that was, Brown was in 1954. The Plessy case was in the 1890s. But the idea that you would have in the law, you would say, well, we're going to have a certain school for Black people and another school for white people, or we're going to have, you can't ride on the bus if you're not white or whatever. That is de jure discrimination. It's written right into the law. De facto discrimination is where it's not written into the law, but it has a discriminatory effect. And that would be like the poll tax, where we say, well, we're not going to let you vote unless you can pay this tax. And then that has an effect that is discriminatory, even though it's not spelled out in the law. So I think that's clear enough that you got the two different types of discrimination. There was a case in the 1970s that said, in order to find that de facto discrimination, like the poll tax, in order to find that that's unconstitutional, you have to show that there was a discriminatory intent. So in other words, if the people that got together and said, hey, you know what, we really, we don't want to have the Black vote influence things in this Southern jurisdiction. So we have to make sure that we exclude them somehow. Well, how can we do that without spelling it out in the law? And somebody was like, well, why don't we have a tax? And then that will effectively limit how many Black people can vote. And so then they passed it. So if that's the intent of the law, then de facto discrimination is also illegal. It's not just de jure discrimination. Now, de jure discrimination is a lot easier to dismiss, but nobody's fool enough to really pass that anymore, unless it's some kind of a quote unquote reverse discrimination kind of thing, like a hiring preferences and affirmative action and those kind of things, which I think are going to be struck down by the Supreme Court at some point in the near future. Some of them already have been. So at any rate, this de facto versus de jure discrimination thing we have going on has fed, when you look at critical race theory, what they see racism everywhere by a disparate effect. So they say, well, they kind of assume that these theorists assume that everything has to be exactly proportional. So if the Black population is 11% of the population, but they don't make up 11% of the accountants, that means we have discrimination somewhere in the accounting world. We're not letting them in, right? And that's what they're saying. Or if there's a, let's say in hockey, how many Black players are there in hockey? Certainly there are fewer than the proportion. Now, what is this ignoring? This is ignoring several things. One is personal preference. You're assuming that people at the same rate that their genes occur in the population will also have the same interest in literally everything, and that everything will fall out into these easy categories based on the numbers. And if they don't, then that means there's something wrong. That means there's discrimination. And to me, that's just you're forcing people to do things that they don't want to do in order to get the numbers that you're trying to get. And you'll never get that. And so you'll always have a grievance. And we get back to the tapping into that conscience that Americans have for racism. So what does that have to do with Superman. The critical race theorists have fallen into the trap of what we call, what scholars call, I wouldn't say we, because I wouldn't call myself a scholar. I've done some research on this topic for this show, but the scholars will criticize what they call race essentialism, which is saying that if you have a particular race, then you automatically have certain traits. Now, we're not talking about genetic traits, like you have red hair, or you're tall, or you're handsome, or you're not handsome, right? Certain genetic traits that are just part of your genes. What they're talking about is character traits. Now, this is, if you're familiar with what Hitler wrote before he rose to power, he's spewing all this racism in his writings because he was buying into race essentialism and basically attributing to Jewish people in particular a certain bad character for no reason other than their genetic heritage. And so that's rejected as totally absurd by actual scholars. But these critical race theorists buy into it because they want to criticize what they call whiteness as an oppressor versus blackness, which is the oppressed. And so here's how that ties into Superman. If you've seen the film, this is the last spoiler alert, turn it off, you don't want to hear a spoiler. Superman comes from Krypton, and he comes with a message from his parents, his birth parents in Krypton. And the beginning of the message makes it sound like they intended to send him to Earth to serve the people of Earth. And he lives by this message for his whole life as he grows up and he becomes Superman, and he's serving the people of Earth. He's protecting them. He stops a war at the beginning of the movie, or I guess that happened before the movie started. He's getting some flack in the media for not considering the political implications of stopping this war. And he says, I'm here to serve humanity. Well, then Lex Luthor and his evil team get to Superman's lair, the Fortress of Solitude in the North Pole, and they hack this message, and they're able to read the rest of the message, which was garbled, so Superman couldn't read it. And the rest of the message has this mission from Superman's parents where they're telling him he should come and subjugate the Earth and rule over the people of Earth as a dictator. And then, of course, this message gets leaked to the world because the envious Lex Luthor is trying to make Superman look bad. And of course, then Superman is just devastated by this news that he was sent by his birth parents to abuse the people of Earth and to become a powerful dictator over them and to subjugate them under his rule. And he's devastated. And he has this moment where he goes back to Kansas, where his adoptive parents had raised him. And there's a scene where he's sitting on the back porch and he's eating a bowl of cereal. And he's not wearing a Superman costume. He's just wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And his dad comes out and sits next to him, his adoptive dad, and gives him these words of wisdom. Now, Superman was clearly raised in a conservative, patriotic, Midwestern home. And so people who think this movie is woke, I ask you, how do you explain that? Because his father gives him this great wisdom. He says, you're not what people mean for you to be. You're not what your parents tried to make you into. So we give you guidance and we raise you, but you are who you become. You are your own person. And you should do what's right. And we're really proud of you because we think you have done what's right. And so then he realizes he's not destined to be an oppressor. He's not racially predisposed. There's no race essentialism here. He is the captain of his own choices. And that means that his personal character is something that he can develop and he can make these choices. This is total conservatism here. You have agency over your choices. You can develop personal character, and that can be good character or it can be bad character. And it's not immutable. You can change your character by reforming your behavior. And so it was this, I looked at this and I thought, why are people saying this is woke? This is a totally conservative message. And also, what about on the issue of immigration? Conservatives are not against immigration. We're against illegal immigration. We're against the infiltration of our country by people who mean to do us wrong. And they've actually caught people that are on the terrorist watch list coming over the southern border. So not all of those people are just coming here because they want to get a job or go to school. That some of them likely mean us harm. And there are people that come over and commit crimes. Now, there are plenty of people that aren't doing that. But we have laws that are in place. You need to obey the law. And do we need to reform the system? We probably do, because we have so many people here that are not legally here and they're kind of part of the society. I don't know that it's realistic to deport everybody who's illegally here, or if that's even something we should do. But that's a different topic for another day. But my point is, Superman meets the criteria for what conservatives have always thought we should want in an immigrant: someone who comes over and obeys the law, who works hard, who believes in our values. Those are people that we should welcome with open arms, people that can raise their right hand and take the oath, the citizenship oath, after passing the test, understanding the civics, believe our creed, believe in the principles of the American Revolution. Those are the people we should welcome from anywhere in the world. Being an American is not about race. It's not about your religion. It's not about your gender. It's not about your national origin. It's about whether you believe in the principles of this country. And that's why Superman is not woke. By the way, I also couldn't help but notice that Superman is clearly a Republican and Lois Lane is clearly a Democrat. And we can talk about that more after the break, but it looks like we're running up against a deadline here. I'm Clayton Campbell, filling in for J.R. Flores on Kern Radio. You can listen to us online at kernradio.com.
News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
Hi, I'm Rick Sorcy, certified kitchen and bath designer and owner of Stockdale Kitchen and Bath. When it comes to remodeling your kitchen or bathroom, you deserve a process that's personal, precise, and as stress-free as possible. That's why I personally design every project with you using state-of-the-art three-dimensional software so you can see exactly what your new space will look like even before construction begins. No guesswork, no surprises, just a clear vision brought to life. And I believe in guiding you through every step of the process. I shop with you, cabinets, countertops, fixtures, so you get the perfect combination of style and function. We work with top quality American-made cabinet brands like Waypoint, Diamond, Medallion to ensure long-lasting beauty and craftsmanship. If you're ready to turn your vision into reality, let's design something amazing together. Call Stockdale Kitchen and Bath at 661-834-3333 or visit StockdaleKitchenandBath.com today. Stockdale Kitchen and Bath. Beautiful cabinetry, smart design.
Got battery issues? Choose the #1 name in power, A1 Battery. We've got you covered with top quality batteries for every need. Cars, scooters, motorhomes, garage door openers, key fobs, golf carts, home alarm systems, wheelchairs, and so much more. If it takes a battery, A1 Battery has it. With multiple locations to serve you. Enjoy free diagnostics on batteries, starters, alternators, and electrical systems. Plus, get free installation with any purchase. First Friday of each month is free Key Fob Battery Friday. Family owned and operated since 1960. A1 Battery has been providing reliable, friendly service to Kern County. Need us in a pinch? We offer emergency services to make sure you're never stranded. Tell us you heard it on the radio and get 10% off your purchase. Call A1 Battery today, 589-1433 for the location nearest you, or visit online at a1batterycompany.com. A1 Battery, powering your world, one battery at a time.
When it comes to back to school shopping at Target, you can choose not to choose. From getting what you need to expressing who you are. With prices that make every choice feel right, why not choose all of the above? From backpacks, bedazzled kicks, and picture day perfect styles as bold as they are. For bring your own lunch days to science project partner days, snack stash days, decorate your locker days, and paint outside the line days. All at prices that will definitely make your day. For all of the above, it's back to school at Target.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting great candidates? Well, they're not hard to find when you go to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. People who are actively looking for jobs like yours. So it's easy to find the right person fast. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Start your day right. First Look with Scott Cox, 6 to 9 a.m.
Scott Cox here from the First Look program. I'm taking a couple of days off. Not really a vacation, not really going anywhere, just kind of a short, sweaty staycation, I suppose. But we'll be back Wednesday morning, bright and early, with brand new programming for you. You don't want to miss that. 6 to 9 a.m. right here at News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN.
First Look with Scott Cox, 6 to 9 a.m. News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN. The Charlie Kirk Show, weekdays at 6 p.m. on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1180 KERN. Now, back to the JR Show.
Welcome back, radio friends. This is Clayton Campbell on the JR Flores Show. So right before the break, I mentioned that Superman is clearly a Republican and Lois Lane is clearly a Democrat. So I want to explain what I mean by that. You'll get from this picture that Superman is this very optimistic and earnest and honest and faithful person. He's just so optimistic about the world, and he sees the best in people, and he's very trusting of people. And Lois Lane, there's even this conversation where she says, "You trust you're so trusting. You want to believe in people," and she says she questions everything. And it's when you think about it, people with more of kind of a liberal mindset tend to question authority. And she talks about how she was into punk rock music and names a couple bands, and they have this little debate about the bands. I guess he was into the corny bands and she liked the cool punk rock bands. And there's a line where he says to her, maybe that's when she says he's too trusting and he's too much of a Boy Scout, I guess. Maybe that's the real punk rock, he says. And what is punk rock but rebellion against the system, right? Standing up to the man. And so when the man tells you you have to be a leftist, then the punk rock thing to do is to resist that and be the old-fashioned conservative. So I thought that was a clever banter there. And when I say Lois Lane is a Democrat, I have a lot of friends who are Democrats, and I don't, I think they're wrong on politics. They're my fellow Americans, and I do love them. And I think they mean well generally. Like I said last week, there are a couple different categories of Democrats. You got the ones that are the old guard who are politically realistic. And then you have the radical Jacobins that I don't think should be allowed to have access to the levers of power ever. And then you have the people like the Andre Gonzalez of the world who are just kind of say the popular thing and kind of schmooze their way along through life. But generally speaking, the voters, that's what I'm talking about. The voters that have maybe more of a question authority attitude, the Lois Lane type people, America has room for all points of view. In my view, we shouldn't let Democrats have control of things, though. So that doesn't mean that they can't sit there and raise their questions, but we should never put them in charge. So that's why I think the Superman movie is not woke. So I highly recommend you go see it. It's a lot of fun, and you can watch it without looking for politics. By the way, some people were also trying to draw a parallel between the war that Superman stops in this movie. There's like two fictional countries, and there's one country that's funded by or equipped by Lex Luthor and his evil corporation with a bunch of modern weapons, and they're going to invade their neighboring country. So some people thought that this was supposed to be some kind of an analog to the situation with the Israeli army going into Gaza. And this movie, they started this movie long before that happened. The script was written, if anything, it's more of a parallel to the Russia-Ukraine war, if anything, but I don't think it's intended to be a parallel to anything. So the final thought on this Superman film and James Gunn's conversation about immigration and the alleged wokeness of this movie. How much should we look to Hollywood for political guidance? And not just Hollywood, but Nashville. I mean, the entertainment industry in general, to music, to movies, to television. How much should we look to them for these types of media for guidance on politics? We really shouldn't at all. And anybody who does is an idiot, in my view. If you're looking to the TV to tell you what to think about anything, that's really simpleton. That's a very simpleton way to go about the world. And anybody who got their news from Stephen Colbert, for example, is not a very serious thinker. So my view is that entertainment is a reflection of the existing culture. And that's mainly because the entertainment companies are capitalist enterprises that are selling a product, and they don't want to sell something that won't sell. Now, you see some examples where, say, for example, Disney will make some kind of woke movie that does really, really poorly. And you wonder, when are they going to learn their lesson? They're basically paying their tax to the radical people that would boycott them and try to shut them down. Honestly, I think that's what James Gunn was doing when he was making these comments. He's confronted by somebody who's clearly preoccupied with politics. And James Gunn is an entertainer. He's making a movie to entertain people. He's got this great character who's been in the comic books and movies for 100 years now, nearly. I think it was 1935, so 90 years ago, Superman first landed from Krypton. And so he's put on the spot. And what are you supposed to say when you're in the Hollywood crowd? If he says, oh, no, it's not about that at all. Superman is a Republican and Lois Lane's a Democrat and Lex Luthor is clearly a Marxist because he's envious, then he would have been canceled. So what is he supposed to say? He's saying what he's supposed to say. Yeah, oh, of course, it's about immigration. And I guess the creators of Superman, they were immigrants. And they viewed immigration probably in a different way than we do now, back in 1935. So it's not political. The culture, the media is a reflection of the culture, and politics is downstream of culture. You're not going to change the culture through the politics either. It's backwards. If you want to actually have substantial change in the society, the culture itself needs to change. And if you can come up with a way to do that, let me know. Because that is something that's mostly organic, and it's beyond the control of any politician. It's beyond the control of any grand conspiracy theory or any kind of powerful alliance of media and academia and the news, or entertainment industries. So I would just caution you against that. I find it very hilarious. Speaking of the punk rock thing we talked about earlier, I remember during the COVID lockdowns, people started playing the song "We're Not Going to Take It." Was that Twisted Sister? Is that the name of the band? That song was that, we're not going to take it, and it's basically this punk rock. You can't tell us what to do. We're not. And what did the punk rockers who made that song do? They immediately went to their publicists and said, "We don't want anything to do with this," because they didn't want their social credit score to go down. And so they were very clear. Oh, wait, no, we're all for the lockdowns. Everybody should have to get a vaccine. Everybody should have to wear the mask, and everybody should have to stay home from church, but the liquor stores can stay open. So they were quick to distance themselves from that, which was the least punk rock thing those guys have ever done in their lives. So, all right, well, I'm pinch hitting for J.R. Flores today. I get one more day. It'll be tomorrow. And so I'm still learning the sign language here. So Chris is an excellent producer, and he has this sign language that, because I don't speak radio broadcast or at least understand the sign language of it, he'll hold up a couple fingers, and I'm thinking, does that mean I have 30 seconds? Or does that mean I have 3 minutes? And whenever I think it means I have 3 minutes, it means I have 30 seconds. And whenever I think it means I have 30 seconds, it means I have.
I'll print out some pictures for you for tomorrow.
Yeah, I need it. I'm slowly picking it up, and maybe if I did this a couple more times, I would have it down. But JR asked me to cover for 3 days. So I covered Friday and today, and then I'll be on the air tomorrow for my final hour. So I get to do one Ralph Bailey show worth of time in 3 days. So that I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow, I do hope to have a surprise guest. I haven't confirmed precisely when he'll be here. I'm pretty confident he will be there, and so and we'll talk about politics. He's one of my oldest friends in the world. Mark Bigger is his name. I will spoil the surprise right now, since this whole episode has been spoilers. And he's a lawyer here in town as well. I've known him since 1997. He and I are both political nerds, and so hopefully we'll have a compelling conversation for you to listen to about local government and maybe some questions that political leaders at the local level and the state level and the national level ought to consider before doing anything that affects other people's lives. All right, well, that does it for me today. I'm Clayton Campbell, filling in for J.R. Flores at Kern Radio. Thank you for listening.
This is AM 1180 KERN Greenacres. This is 96.1 FM Bakersfield. Online at KERNradio.com.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com.